Great. Well, welcome everyone. We're so excited to have this panel for you all. Hopefully this will just kind of be an overview, and then we really want the majority of this to be questions from you all. So ask all the questions you've been wondering, all the things you've been thinking. You've got two surgeons here, especially surgeons in different stages of their career, who have lots of insight and advice to give you all. So like Sarah said, I'm Lindsay Kilgore. I am one of the breast surgical oncologists here, and I am an associate clerkship director for the M3 surgery clerkship. I'm also the mentor for the surgical student organization of surgery. And I have several other roles within the School of Medicine, so you guys will see me around. I think some of you may have seen me in the cadaver lab today because I helped direct all those clinical anchors. But, for me, it's very interesting because I was just a medical student not too long ago, in your shoes, and I was actually a medical student here. Then I did general surgery residency. I chose to stay here at KU. And then I went off to fellowship at MD Anderson and did a breast surgical oncology fellowship there, and then chose to come back here as staff. So kind of have a younger perspective on having just been through all of this. But then we've got Dr. Burbell, who is our associate clerkship director. Are you on, Dr. Burbell?
Okay, one, did you just call me old since you're
I
young?
said I'm younger, which is true.
Okay, just checking. And I'm the clerkship director. You're the associate clerkship director.
Yeah, I'm the lesser version of the clerkship director.
Not lesser. I didn't say lesser. Okay, yes.
Okay, so they want you to know about yourself really quick.
Oh, okay, so real quick. So I'm the clerkship director. I've been at KU now 8 years and took on the position of clerkship director last October. So since then, we've kind of made quite a bit of changes to the clerkship, and you'll hear a lot more as time goes through when you start hearing about camp and some of those other things. So Sarah's definitely one of those people that you can reach out if you have more questions about that. If you have questions more about the clerkship and more about how to, the medical student side of things, I can answer that. Dr. Kilgore would probably be more if you have any residency questions, or, we both can answer the same questions too. So really, we want this panel to be questions that you want or want answered. So, and yes, definitely type things in the chat if they come up. I am multitasking tonight, so just FYI. My wife is also one of the breast surgical oncologists. She's the division chief for breast surgical oncology, which therefore she's my boss, and she's also therefore Dr. Kilgore's boss. And they're actually doing a recruitment dinner for a new surgeon today. So I am holding the fort down. So if you see about an 8 or 10-year-old running around, that means that they're getting hungry. So I may have to do something to get them fed as well. So FYI, that may be going on in the background.
And then also just to preface too, because of that, since we're doing this dinner, I'm gonna have to sneak away a little bit early. So if there's specific questions for me that you all want answered, I'll make sure that I tell you all before I leave. But yes, so, Dr. Burbell and I had taken over the clerkship, and I've become really involved in the residency program since coming back as staff. And this has been over the past year. So we've made a lot of changes. We're really trying to integrate things from M1, M2 year. But you all may have a lot of questions that haven't been answered because you didn't get that initial integration that we're trying to set up moving forward. And so, I'm actually starting an M1 SIR week, and it starts next week to get people an introduction to the operating room, and I'm offering it 4 times throughout the year. So we're literally trying to start from M1s and going on up. So we have a question in the chat about how was I able to display leadership skills in my residency application, and what suggestions would I have for M1s? I think as an M1, that's truly your year to just explore everything, get involved in a ton of different things, different organizations, and then you can start to decide where your passion lies. So, it's not going to look bad upon you if you're a part of 10 organizations in 1 year, and then you decided you want to do surgery. Now you're a part of 1 or 2, or maybe even 3. That's okay. You don't know what you want to do when you're an M1. So really get out there, join a bunch of organizations. I I did nights with needles, and I did the ER group, and I did the OB-GYN interest group. I did all these different groups, and then I still had them on my CV that I did in my first year. But then, you see that my leadership positions within different organizations increased throughout my M2, M3, and M4 years. So really the first year, just get involved and see where your interests really are. But then once you know what you want to do, you want to hold leadership positions. So if you're interested in surgery, you want to be on the executive board of SSO, or you want to be on AWS, you want to be involved in WCAST. We'll talk a lot about getting involved as a leader with CAMP, which is, one of the things that we're trying to get you guys exposed to early on if you participated in our SSO AWS event the other night. But, be a camp leader. Regardless of which specialty you go into, having leadership positions in different organizations can only help you. I was the president of we had the international outreach program, and I did a bunch of other different things. So whatever you can get involved in, wherever your passion lies, just show that you have an interest, not just to be a member, but to try to get involved and to lead or to host an event or to however you can shine that way. Dr. Rebel, you have anything to add to that?
Leadership is important. And like Dr. Kilgore said, initially be a part of everything, get exposure to everything. We want to see your ability to grow. We don't want to see one tracks. In other words, are you involved in just SSO and nothing else? Well, that's not your life. You're going to have other things that you're going to be involved in. So are you part of an organization outside of medical school? What else are you involved in? Everything like that kind of counts. Not necessarily that you need to go back to your high school days and tell me that you were head cheerleader or anything like that, but we need to see how well-rounded you are. Okay.
Yeah, well, the well-rounded is really key. It doesn't matter that it's all just, if you're interested in going into surgery, that you have surgery leadership positions, hold other, leadership positions, continue to volunteer, continue to just try to be as well-rounded as possible and show a true passion for different things. Also, having hobbies, like he mentioned, is really important too. I think that's one question we always ask our applicants when they're applying for residency, or what are some of your hobbies outside of med school? What do you do to decompress? What do you enjoy in your free time? So that's definitely good. I just got another question. What are residencies looking for with respect to research? Does it have to be specific to the specialty we end up applying for, or is it just research that we do at all? I would definitely say any research is good research. You come in thinking one thing and you may change your mind, but just to show that you start and you finish a project, that's the most key. I can tell you when I interview people for residencies, I specifically ask them about one of their projects and I say, tell me exactly what you did. Because if you list 10 things and you can kind of barely talk about them, but you were on that paper or on that project, that's not meaningful to me at all. Rather than if you had one or two projects that you helped write an IRB, you went and presented at a conference, and then you were able to publish a manuscript. Now, some specialties will demand more research than others. So that's why I say research will never hurt. So if you get involved in a bunch of research, it can only strengthen your application, even if you don't go into a surgical specialty. So, there's lots of people that are out there that want to help students get involved in research projects. And we actually had a research specialty panel. I don't know if any of you attended, but hopefully they answered some more of those questions, and we'll continue to try to have more through SSO to help you with research. But I really don't think research can hurt you at all, especially when you're actively involved. That's why I emphasize involved, because you're going to need to be able to talk about that project during your interview.
And coming up with a question, putting together an abstract, protocol, getting data, writing the manuscript, that's worth more than being able to put your name on 10 papers where you collected data. So it's not just quantity, it's actually more important that you look at quality of research.
And I would say, we've talked to other specialties like plastics, like neurosurgery, and some, very kind of competitive specialties for surgery. And they've said, initial research can be in whatever, but then once you decide that you want to do plastics, they really do want to see at least one project, maybe even more within that specific subspecialty. So like urology, like plastics, et cetera. I don't think necessarily you're not going to get a position if you don't have it, but again, enough research can only strengthen what you're doing. And they say that they just want to see that now you've decided. So once you decided, did you seek out projects in that field? Are you trying to be academic? Because these programs look for, potential residents that are going to be academic clinicians, especially if you're going into, more of an academic competitive residency program. You could still go into community type programs, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you don't want to close any doors, you definitely want to have some research in that specialty.
Question came up about the Wichita students and camp. Wichita has their version of camp. This is something that actually is covered in all three of the campuses. So you do have a camp equivalent in Wichita. And for Wichita students interested in general surgery residency in KC, in your clerkship, you will have to do that one in Wichita. That's kind of the one of the major differences within with the schools is that your third year core is usually done at there either if you're a KC student at KC, if you're a Wichita student at Wichita. So after that, you can do sub-Is in each other's campuses. So that's how you would basically be able to get yourself introduced to the KC faculty is by doing either electives or your sub-I here.
And I would say for the Wichita students that know they're going away, if you are interested in surgery here, try to seek out a mentor before you leave. Maintain that relationship. Just someone who can vouch for you over the years. And let's say you can't come back during third year, there's not an opportunity to. Well, then you already have someone that you can reach out to about doing that sub-I that Dr. Verbel talked about. But also, a lot of when we look at applicants for residency programs, even other specialties, urology, plastics, neurosurgery, they remember that specifically the people that rotated with them as sub-Is, and that's kind of like your audition. So having a leg up by knowing people ahead going into that audition, into that sub-I, that can only help you. So really seeking out people to let them know your interest, say, hey, I'm really interested in your residency, but I'm going to Wichita for the next 2 years, but I want to stay connected. What can I do? Do you have a project you want me to help on? Can I come back and shadow you over a holiday? A lot, different things to keep that connection going.
Through camp, we also have a pretty good relationship with the students in Wichita. So that's also a way of getting introduced to some of the KC faculty because there is definitely some interaction between both campuses through camp.
I have a question what's the best recommendation for summers? I know it's important to do research and volunteer, but are there other specific activities to do that really make a resume stand out? I think in my experience, I always ask people, what are the experiences and exposures you've had to make you know that you for sure want to do surgery? So I think in addition to doing research and to doing some volunteer work, if that's what you're interested, if you're not interested, don't suffer through it. You need to be passionate about whatever you do, whether it's teaching or research or, volunteering. But I think that something is that gain extra exposures in surgery. So you can say, you know what, over my summer, I shadowed 3 different surgeons. I spent time with this surgeon in this specialty, this one and this one, and I loved all of it. Or, I was specifically drawn to cardiothoracic surgery. So seeking out people that you can shadow. And then that shows us too that you sought out time on your own, on your free time, because you love surgery and this is what you want to do.
So if you guys are okay with this, would you mind, so all of us, all the M2s, soon to be M3s someday, submitted our preferences for clerkship today. Can you just talk a little bit about what clerkship is structured like in surgery, what we could expect, and then anything that you think you could tell us that would help us to do really well, the tips and the tricks to do well?
So the surgery clerkship is essentially an 8-week block. Okay. What we've done to try to give you the majority of clinical exposure and experience is we have set up an initial week at the beginning where we try to do all the didactics, all the labs, everything that you need to do to get prepared for that particular for what's coming. That's where camp resides. It's actually during that orientation week, and camp is there's a whole bunch of stuff involved with camp. I don't want to waste time describing camp, but it's actually almost, think of it as a capstone event at the end of the orientation to get you ready for your clerkship. We then do 3 weeks of a general surgery service. And when I say general surgery, that includes elective outpatient surgery, trauma surgery, vascular surgery, surgical oncology, colorectal. What else am I missing?
For general?
Yeah, which one
Yeah.
else? That's it?
And
Okay.
not colorectal. I mean, colorectal is part of surgeon, so they can pick just
Surgeon,
surgeon and
colorectal,
have that
yeah,
exposure.
much that same thing. And then you switch at the 3-week mark, and then you do a subspecialty. And the subspecialties at this point are breast, plastics, ENT, orthopedics, urology, plastic surgery, neurosurgery, CTS, and ophthalmology.
And pediatric.
And pediatric surgery. And then the last week is essentially assessment week. And so we give you time. You will have to prepare for an oral presentation during that time. You also will go through an oral exam. We basically treat you as residents, and as if you're interested in going in surgery, you will have to do an oral exam to pass your boards. So we kind of give you a little taste of what that feels like. And then you take your shelf exam on the Friday afterwards. So you have 3 full unimpeded weeks of clinical experience, which each service structures differently.
This format change has been so helpful. So as a student, when I was a student, you were leaving random cases to go to lectures, to go to things. There wasn't that in-depth dive the first week where you get to know everything to be better prepared for your rotation. So after the first week of orientation, you really should know what to expect, what to do. You know, Dr. Burbell and I give you a great overview. Then you even, hear from the residents on, how to be successful on your clerkship. So after the first week, I think you all will feel very comfortable. And then it's very nice that we let you have the last week to just do your case presentation and your oral exam and study, because we want you all to do really well on the shelf. I know everything's pass fail, but to be pass with distinction here, you have to not only pass with distinction on your shelf, but you have to pass with distinction on the oral exam. And that truly is what sets people apart on their surgery clerkship rotation, is the people that when we're giving oral exams, they know their stuff. They have practice. They have said all this aloud multiple times. You can really tell the people who prepare for that oral exam. We'll give you all the basic topics that you kind of need to know to start to learn. It's basically shelf review as well. But it's actually being able to articulate your thought process, articulate your workup and your diagnosis. We're not asking you to do how to do procedures. We're just asking you that you know the next step is to go to surgery to do a lap app. You're not describing it to us, and that you know how to recover someone, that they need to be in the hospital for, less than 24 hours if they're doing well. So you will get that information. But the overall structure of the clerkship is so much better than it used to be. There's no overnight calls that are mandatory either. If you want to do any elective calls with your residents, you're more than willing to. You can ask about it. You can do it on the weekends. Every service is different, like Dr. Burbell said, so specific expectations will vary depending upon what you're assigned to. And I do the assignments for these clerkships now. We send out a preference card, kind of. You rank all the different choices that you want, and then we try to make sure that you have a varied experience. So you're not doing pediatric, or so it's not, you're doing ophthalmology and vascular surgery. That's not going to give you a good, well-rounded general surgery exposure. So we really are taking into account everything when we assign you guys these clerkship rotations. There's a question, there's multiple questions in the chat. If we are very interested in the teaching aspect of medicine, what are some ways we can get involved as an M1, M2, and how can we gain the skills, knowledge to be an effective teacher? I think getting involved early with camp, participating in all these different activities. The people that have participated in SSO this year, they helped lead some of these workshops. The people that participated in AWS led these workshops, WCAST, and then they're going to go on and be leaders in camp. and kind of have this succession. We also then take people who are involved in camp and we put them on our clerkship executive education committee that Dr. Burbell had formed. So there's lots of different leadership opportunities if you participate early and you want to be involved. And then when you get to be the resident level from a teaching standpoint, KU, if you were to stay in one of the residencies here, they have Residents as Teacher Scholars program. We called it RATS back when I was one, but it's a course that you take throughout the year and you develop different educational experiences. So if you want to teach, there's definitely opportunities, but I would say camp is the best way of getting your foot in the door, as well as some of the other surgical organizations. Someone else said, what's the best way to get into research projects that are more than just doing data collection for residents and attendings? So when we say get involved, I mean, that's your job as a med student is to help make the residents and faculty's life much easier. So when we say get involved, we mean like help them, like help proof the IRB if they're at that stage. If they're already past the IRB stage, we're not going to fault you for that. But then helping with data collection, because a lot of these residents and staff don't have time to do that, and you do. So by you doing that though, and understanding why you're doing what you're doing, then you better understand your project than just plugging in numbers. So like when I have students doing clinical research with me, I'm like, so here's the data I need you to collect, but here's why you're doing it. Here's what I'm going to eventually look statistically at, why we're getting this data that we need to get. And then that student will be involved in the writing of the abstract for a conference and then writing of the manuscript. So you will have a big job when it comes to writing the things. You may be the first person to throw out a draft. And although there may be a million red marks all over it, and then the resident and staff edit it after it, that's a good experience for you to have. So getting involved in research in general, even if it is data collection to begin with, that's what we mean. And then also, if you are heavily involved in, let's say you do one project and they just wanted you to do data and they said, oh no, don't help with the manuscript. I don't know what other people are telling you all, but then say, okay, what are we going to do for the next project? And so maybe if you start on the next one in the earlier phases, you'll do more than just data. So sticking with the mentor and following different projects through will help.
Through the surgery department, we have a contact person in Holly Zink that basically is the clearinghouse for any research ongoing within the department. So if anybody really is interested, I would reach out to her, Holly Zink, Z-I-N-K. You can look in the directory and see her email. All research projects essentially go through her one way or the other. So all the faculty reach out to her for different, different assistance and different things. So she knows pretty much what's going on in the department. So that's probably the best contact or the best reference point if you're interested in the general surgery department. Now for thanks, Sarah. She just put the link on the chat for Holly. If you're interested in urology and if you're interested in CTS, then you're going to have to go through those departments to figure out who does their research. But for general surgery, I would start with Holly.
And I don't know if you guys are part of the mentor program that SSO put on, but that was like a great way to start getting mentors. And if you see who was on that mentor list, those are great people. If you didn't get assigned one, or you got one that maybe wasn't in your specialty that you're now interested in, if you reach out to anyone in the department, they'll tell you, hey, I'm not the research person, but here's my partner so-and-so. They really like working with students, or they have a lot of projects. Because I can tell you from the general surgery standpoint, the trauma division and the breast division are by far the heaviest in research and being productive with students. Or then in urology, they'll tell you who's actively working, like Dr. Cowlick. I think I didn't say her name right, Dr. Casey Cowlick. She's really great working with students. Dr. Ben Orr with cardiothoracic surgery. So we know a bunch of people who love working with students. So, you can even shoot me an email. If I don't respond right away, then send me another one a couple days later. But I just get a lot of emails, but we'll help you set you up with the right people. So.
More questions, bring them on.
There's another question in the chat that was sent to me about what if we change our mind on the surgical specialty that we want to go into and all of our research and activities had been in another field leading up to that?
That's fine. As long as you're making a true change. So as M3s at some point, you'll start thinking, and we'll have discussions about, dual applying and doing general surgery or urology or general surgery and CTS. We'll address those at that point. Really, at this point, it's you don't know what you don't know. So there's an interest there. as you go through your M3, something's gonna hit you, and that's gonna be the thing. And everybody looks at me always like funny. It's like, yeah, it's gonna hit you. You're gonna know going up that day is that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Okay, it happens to all of you, and Dr. Kilgore can tell you it happened to her too. Surgery wise, now the breast thing took a little while and took a lot of my wife beating up on her about it, but that's another.
I thought I was going to do general surgery and then like cardiothoracic. So, you know, if you have a general interest in some of those specialties within general, you should do general, because a lot of people come into general and change their specialty mind, or still, you know, practice general surgery. But if you know, oh man, urology, that makes me excited, like our neurosurgery, you shouldn't be applying to general surgery as a backup. That's kind of what we're trying to say, I think, right, is that you need to start thinking in your second and third year based on your scores, on your step scores, on your competitive level. You need to speak to people in that specialty and say, do you think I have a chance of matching? You know, no one's going to know for sure, but you're going to know if you're semi-competitive or not. And if you're not, then you need to look at other things. But I will say, you know, people used to kind of use gen surg as a kind of like a backup. And nowadays it's getting right back up there as competitive as other places with scores and other things. So overall, we just need to take a look at that. You know, one score is not going to hurt you. You can improve. You know, I know we're moving to pass fail systems and things like that, but there are ways to get around that if you had just one bad day. So that's why it matters the whole application, but that's why you need to reach out to people who have done this and can counsel you and be honest with you and open with you about your application.
And it's very hard in 4 years to develop a CV of research. And so you start in one thing and that's what you carry on, and you have a change of heart, that's fine. Again, it's the quality. It's what is it that you were doing, or were you just trying to pad your CV with quote research? So research that is meaningful counts regardless of specialty.
I have 2 other questions in the chat sent to me. So any advice about the timeline for asking surgery attendings from clerkships for recommendation letters for residency applications? So what I would say is, if you're interested in surgery from day one of your clerkship, when you start rotating with people say, well, what do you want to do? You know, you may think, you know, OB or surgery, or you may think, you know, ortho or gen surg, but you just say, I want to do surgery. And they're going to say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I'm thinking about these 2. I mean, you need to be definitive that you want to do surgery if you do, or by the end of the rotation, you're like, wow, I didn't think I was going to love surgery, but now I do. I really want to do surgery. We want to hear that you want to. And then at the end of the clerkship, you can say, you know, I'm really thinking I'm going to apply to general surgery. Would you mind if I reached back out to you in the future to get a letter of recommendation? The more earlier you put it on our radar, then I'm going to be thinking about that student. I may write more comments down so that I can make a more meaningful letter later. You know, within your clerkship rotations, every single specialty or subspecialty that you all are rotating on has kind of a leader of that. And you'll know their names because we tell you to reach out to them, or they'll be helping coordinate things. So that's kind of your person. If you end up liking vascular surgery, we're going to have you speak with Dr. Thors, who can also speak with Dr. Hans. If you end up liking trauma, ACS, we're going to have you speak with Dr. Turner, who can then help facilitate different things. Because these are the faculty that are dedicated to teaching medical students, and they serve on our education committee and are respected within the department for helping students get where they want to be. So speak about it early, tell them that you're probably going to be asking them for a letter of recommendation, and then reach out months before things are due, asking, hi, you know, I'm so-and-so. I don't know if you remember me. I rotated with you during my third year clerkship. I'm going to be applying to X specialty or general surgery, whatever it is. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to write me a letter of recommendation. That gives them heads up to start thinking, you know, what do they remember you, gather information, and then they'll say yes. And then you need to send them a follow-up thing, you know, when it's released, to start putting in the information on ERAS, or say, you know, I just submitted my application. I listed you as a reference. They will be contacting you. So as much follow-up as you can give. I would also say another thing about people that write letters of recommendation for you is you need to follow up with them if you see that it's not being submitted, because you'll be able to see when a letter is submitted. You'll waive your right to read it, which is what you should do, waive all your rights. But you'll be able to see when they submit them or not, and continue to send reminders like, hey, just wanted to remind you the letter's due next week or in 2 weeks, because staff get very busy. And like I said, we get a million emails. So constant reminders are good for staff, especially busy surgeons, to get you that letter. But reaching out early as possible, I think, is really key. And then if they do write you a letter, you need to send them a follow-up and a thank you. We spend a lot of time writing letters, and then for students who don't write thank yous, I'm like, that was kind of interesting. Just a quick email even. Doesn't have to be handwritten. Back in the day, I wrote handwritten ones. But just something to say thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing where I match, and I'll let you know where I end up, or something along those lines. A lot of these people, though, that are writing you letters are going to be people that you've had constant contact with. So it'll be a lot less awkward to be asking for the letters of recommendation, because you're going to be continuing to follow up on them because you loved your general surgery rotation with Dr. Burbell. You've told him you want to do general surgery. You followed up with him to see if you can help in camp. You've done whatever. Like, he's going to know you. So asking for a letter of recommendation is not going to be awkward. But if you are one of those people who rotates on surgery and now you love it, making sure you say that at the end and then following back up with that staff is helpful, coming full circle.
You guys have a lot on you to try to keep track of, and for that matter, so do we. So I would recommend starting early, especially now, either through SSO or through AWS or any other organizations, and start developing some relationships with some of the attendings. Okay. These panels are great because it gives you a little bit of how to start. But if you really want mentoring, you really need mentoring, then the best place is to actually start with an attending. Okay. Because there's going to be a lot of it. Some of it is timing. Some of this is just suggestions. Some of it is, I need you to do this, this, and this to improve your application. You can definitely have more of a path in front of you if you actually speak with an attending.
Rather than a superficial relationship. So when you start getting your third and fourth year and you're asking for these, it's very superficial. We know you briefly, but if you, from the beginning, we've seen you growing up, we've seen your passion, it's going to be a much more meaningful letter.
And with that, then, it's hard to figure out whether you like surgery or not right now. That's fine. I've mentored students from M1 that end up going into something different, and that's fine too. The point being is that as things change, especially now with step one going to pass fail, what else do we need to look at? How this is going to change your application? It's hard for you guys to figure out what is important and what's not. So I have a list. Dr. Kilgore's on it. I have other faculty members that are on it, that we actually have the ability to help mentor at this level, a somewhat of a path for you guys to follow. Okay. You don't have to, but it's also, I would suggest at least having a conversation one-on-one with somebody that's either been through the process or understands the total process to give you a better idea. Like I said, these panels are great, but we can't touch on everything that's going to come into how to set up your ARIS application, how to get your letters of recommendation. When do you start looking for those letters? When do you start asking for those letters? Dr. Kilgore kind of mentioned some of that, but there's some nuances to that as well. What do you start looking at your personal statement? What does that entail? There's multiple aspects of kind of getting ready for the next level that we can't cover in an hour. So this is when you start making those contacts at the faculty level. Doesn't have to be in surgery, but if you're interested in surgery, that's probably one of the better places to start. And we can start kind of guiding you through that.
Because one of the questions we get asked is, do all my letters of recommendation need to be in that surgical subspecialty or in that department? And I would tell you that majority of the surgeons will tell you, yes, all the letters need to come from surgeons, unless for some reason it was like a big research mentor who you did a bunch of stuff with. Because when I get an application that's from like a family med doc, an internal medicine doc, a so-and-so, and then one surgeon, I'm like, okay, so what surgical experience do they have? What relationships do they form with surgeons? Do they really know what it takes to be a surgeon? So you start to doubt those types of things. And, a lot of my friends in different surgical subspecialties say the exact same thing, that if you don't have multiple letters from that surgical subspecialty, it's kind of a red flag. So the more connections you can make early, the better. And again, if you change, that's fine. We'll find you people, we promise. If you decide you want to do surgery later, or you switch from wanting to do ortho to doing like gen surg and breast, Sarah. But we'll find you the right people. And that's why maintaining relationships, because we want you all to do well. We want you to match in whatever specialty it is, even if it isn't our specialty. And we know people change their minds. So even if you go into gen surg, you come in thinking one thing and do another. So we got another question in the chat. I was wondering if you could provide tips on how to honor during the surgery rotation.
So there's no honors anymore. It's pass or pass with distinction. So pass with distinction, the two requirements are you're going to have to basically pass with distinction on the shelf exam. In other words, you're going to have to score, it's 80 or it's at 80th percentile. Can't remember which one.
75th percentile on the shelf or better.
There's a score of 80 to get pass with distinction. Okay, which means therefore that during the clerkship, you're going to really have to buckle down and learn surgery. And then pass with distinction on the oral exam. And for that really shows us that you understand the surgical concepts, understand, what it takes to diagnose and prepare somebody for surgery. I'm not going to ever ask you how to do the surgery until you're a resident. But it kind of gives us the ability to kind of look into your build. In other words, are you talking like a surgeon? Are you behaving like a surgeon? Are you thinking like a surgeon? And you'll notice that difference whenever you come on clerkships. Medicine thinks differently than pediatrics, than surgery, than neurology. We all have our own ways of looking at a patient and looking at a condition. So are you thinking like a surgeon, or are you thinking, like a family practitioner? Those things come out in the oral exam. And based on your answering of the questions, if you pass with distinction on that and on the shelf exam, that's how you end up with pass with distinction on the clerkship.
And your clinical work ethic and all that, I know that's not shown in the actual number grade that you get, but that is what matters significantly for, like we said, the letters of rec and the relationships, the people that want to help you. Like if you don't try, but you still get, pass with distinction, and then you're trying to apply to our general surgery residency, we're like, we don't even remember that person, that does not help you. That only hurts you. So really working hard. I know that everyone's about the numbers and we still want you to get those numbers to get that, but you also have to work hard and want to do it and show that you want to do surgery.
And when you're applying for residency, remember, it's the whole package. Some of us focus on different things. Honestly, I never look at what you did on your clerkships. Yeah, if you failed, then yeah, that's obviously, I noticed that. But, the ability to pass to pass with distinction or honors in surgery is, to a certain degree, in places subjective. We try to make it at KU as objective as possible, but I've looked at other schools where the whole group passes with distinction. So what does that really mean? So from my point of view, I'm going to focus in different areas of your application when it comes to how I'm going to try to figure out if you're the right candidate for the residency here at KU. So you can't get focused on one aspect of it. Clerkships are important, and you have to, you want to do well, definitely, but is that the make or break? No. Okay. So you work hard, you develop relationships, you create a portfolio that kind of makes you look like you are a surgeon and want to be a surgeon. And that's kind of what takes you into the interview.
I read all those letters of recommendation, and some place.
I read the letters too.
Yeah, the letters are what matter so much. That's what I'm saying, guys, is that, when you say, and someone says like like if you had Dr. Burbell or, someone else from our program say, we are actively recruiting this person, we want them to stay at KU. When I get someone from like SLU and their program's trying to recruit them, someone else is trying to recruit them, I'm like, wow, their program knows them really, really well and wants them to stick there. I want to steal that person. Like they must be really good when all these people are saying they want to stick there. So those are the types of things that matter in your letters of rec. Someone put a thing up again about letters of recommendation in the comments saying, can those letters of recommendation be from doctors who you didn't do a rotation with? For example, a doctor that has been a mentor since undergrad where a relationship was maintained throughout medical school.
Yeah, because that one is going to give you kind of that personal side of you that we may not get otherwise. But you have to make sure that whoever writes that letter makes a point of talking about you on a personal side, not on a clinical side.
And
Okay.
that's why, I've had people that couldn't get assigned to a rotation with me, for instance, but they've shadowed me in the clinic. They've randomly volunteered to come in my OR on a holiday week because I've served as a mentor for them. So then I could speak on both their clinical side and also a very good personal side as well.
And through different, it's one of the things that we're trying to build into the M3 years as well through SSO is we have, I don't want to call them workshops. What do you call them, Sarah? Different,
You like our specialty touches?
Yeah.
Where we're trying to partner with the specialty groups and show surgery in a really specific area.
And so we will go through the ARS application. We will go through the letters of recommendation in more detail, how to write a personal statement, those kind of things. There's definitely more of that as you come into your M3s, because if we go through all that right now as M2s, you're going to forget half of it and it's not going to be relevant. You kind of have to be in that clinical environment to start to understand what is it that we're asking you to do, or, you can't write a personal statement about why you like X if you haven't even experienced it clinically yet. So as you start to develop that experience, that exposure, this starts to all crystallize. And that's where we really kind of step in and give you a lot more, not just information, but a lot more guidance.
Your first 2 years are really about getting as much experience and exposure to start to try to see what you're interested, what you're not interested in. Then it'll solidify in your third year. And let's say in your clerkship, you don't get assigned what you were really thinking you wanted to do. That's okay. Then reach out and go shadow on your own time. You're not going to have every day busy, every single morning, every single afternoon for the rest of med school full. So you can reach out and say, hey, we have a winter break. Could I come in one day and see what this specialty is like and shadow you in the OR because I didn't get assigned it for my clerkship? I will say that this is happening a lot less where you're not getting something you want because we're really taking into account when you submit your preferences, but not all, they may only take one student and there's 3 of you interested. Well, that's kind of all we can do. So you need to kind of seek it out on your own. Someone just commented, I've been working significantly in another passion that is not related to surgery, but I still do things in surgery. How do you see those non-surgery activities fit into an application? I love non-surgery activities. I think that makes you well-rounded. We don't want someone who's just ortho, or, gen surge, all they did. They don't have any extra interest or hobbies. They could be, working on, like I said, I did international, medical assistant stuff, but I mean, you could, as long as you find a passion and something you can talk about, it's going to strengthen your application. And maybe you even tie it in when you're writing your personal statement, like this has special meaning to me. So I've been doing this. And here's how it, fit in with my, surgical experience. So that's only a way that you can be more well-rounded.
I guess you're getting all the questions because I'm not getting any questions. Nobody likes to.
I just said message, so I think they're just all messaging me. What other questions do we have? Sarah, have you gotten any?
I don't. I have a list of questions. If nobody has anything they want to say, we have 15 minutes of ultra valuable time, guys.
And I have about 5 more minutes, and then I've got to step away.
Okay, well then I can ask if nobody wants it, but anyone can cut me off. So before you leave, Dr. Kilgore, hopefully you both can answer this. Like if you had to say top 3 most important things I want to see, just like ways that people can direct their time, what would you tell people to do? I want to see this, this, and this. Or just.
So surgery, if you really want to do surgery, okay, surgery is not a job. You'll never be able to do a 9 to 5, especially as you're starting your career. This is 5 years that you're committing, if not more, before you're actually able to go out and practice. So there has to be some sort of passion. There has to be some kind of, wow, this is really what I want to do. Because otherwise, you're not going to finish the residency, or you're not going to go into practice. Okay. And this has nothing to do with you're male or female. There's a lot of misconceptions that women can't do surgery. It's too long. They can't have a family. They can't do this. You know, we have a whole division in the general surgery department that is the breast surgical oncology division, that it's all females. Can you do it? Yes. Can you have a family? Yes. So you want to really start figuring out, this is what I really want to do. If that's the case, okay, then from there you can move forward. You got to really start thinking about it as not as a thing to do, but this as a means of really identifying who you are. You're a surgeon, and there's a meaning behind that. Okay, so start exploring that now, because otherwise you're going to be miserable. 5 years of surgical residency, if you really don't like this, you are miserable, believe me. And that's why we have people that come into it, and after a year and a half, leave because they figure out, wow, no, I can't handle this. So you really have to be more than committed. This really has to speak to you.
I mean, I echo the passionate thing. I mean, you have to love this more than anything else, any other subspecialty, to be committed. You have to get that feeling, and you guys will get it if you haven't already shadowed in the OR, that this is where you want to be. You love operating more than anything else, because there will be long days, there will be hard days. There's many missed events with family members, with loved ones, friends, etc., to do this. But if your passion's there, it doesn't matter. You'll need to ask your family, friends, when you're going through rotations. They'll tell you. They'll notice which rotations you're happy on. My husband noticed it. He knew that I was just so happy anytime I did something surgical, but especially my surgery rotation. So you'll find where your passion is. I would also say hardworking. I definitely look for students that are hardworking, who want to be here, who get here early, who stay here late, who are trying to get the best out of the rotation. You should want to do that on every clerkship, because you're not going to see those things ever again. That's what I tried to do, even on, neurology and other things. It all ties back into surgery. You'll deal with pediatric patients. You'll deal with delirious patients, crazy patients. You'll deal with, OB-GYN complications, things like this. So you can really learn something on every rotation. So work hard on every rotation, but especially your surgery one. Show up early, stay late, show that you're interested in, and be engaged and involved. And then the other thing I would say is that I look for people that are leaders and who are well-rounded. So getting involved, but not only just putting that name of that, random interest group you're in, but being a leader in that interest group and holding a position, wanting to do more. You don't have to be, holding 10 different positions, because then you're going to be spread too thin, but finding wherever that other additional passions are and then leading in those, that makes you stand out, and also shows that you are a person as well when you have different hobbies and interests.
Question came up about the WHSS students. You do not need to do a sub-I, okay? The advantage of KU having the two campuses is I know the faculty at Wichita, so I can always call and say, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? So you don't need, it's not a requirement. It's more about building relationships and building, mentoring, that if you really are interested in a particular program, and that's true whether it's here at KU or if you're interested in the Nebraska program, at some point, it would behoove you to actually do a rotation there if that's the program you really are interested in, because they get to know you. So,
yeah, I think it shows more your interest, because if you're saying you really want to come to KU, but you've never really met us and you've never really shadowed or been here, how do you know that this is the program and the people you want to be with? So,
you got to realize that for the 5 residency slots in general surgery here at KU, we have about 750 different applicants that come in that we have to vet. From that, we end up doing about 100 interviews. Okay, so the more the program knows you, the more you have been exposed to that program, whether here or wherever else it is that you want to go. Not that that's your ticket into the residency, but it's definitely a means by which I have another point of data to discriminate you against everybody else.
there's
So
one
the more
quick
I
question.
know you, the more I know you, the more I can then look at your application and put a person to it rather than just an application.
And same with like the residents vouching for you, regardless of which specialty or subspecialty or whatever you want to go into. When the residents know you and vouch for you, that helps way more. So I will tell you here at KU in multiple specialties, because I've talked to a bunch of different people, when the residents know you and like you and want to work with you and know your work ethic, that speaks so many more volumes and words than just a staff who randomly interviewed you on an interview day and liked you. I will tell you, if the residents don't like you, you won't get into the program, because these people spend the next 5+ years with you, and they have to like you and they have to want to work with you, and it becomes a family. Your whatever residency program you go into, it may be a dysfunctional family at times, but it's still a family. So all the residents' opinions really do matter as well. And you want to be with people that you mesh well with. You don't want to go a program where they're not your people. I can promise you that. So, I have to step away. If there's other questions that come up, don't hesitate to reach out. But really, I think you guys just even listening in on these panels, you're already worlds ahead of other people. So continue to stay engaged, participate in the different activities that come up, continue to show your interest, and then seek out mentors to help you along the way. And especially if you're thinking that you for sure already know you want to do, plastics or ortho or neurosurgery, reach out to people in those subspecialties, and they'll serve as great mentors too. And if you don't know where to get started within certain people, then you don't even know who to start to contact, you can reach out to us, and we know people in different specialties to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Kilgore. We really appreciate it. I hope
Bye,
it goes well
guys.
tonight.
All right. There was a question that came up. What are the big red flags you have noticed when reviewing applications? So the biggest question we always have is, would you come to our program? Why are you applying here? Okay. Here in the Midwest, we get a ton of applicants from all over the country. We're centrally located. So is a student from Oregon really going to come to KU? Is a student from Florida really going to come to KU for residency? So there has to be a reason why you're applying there. Obviously, if you're failing your courses as M1 or M2, that raises red flags. We don't ask we can't ask about criminal records, but if you have one, that comes through automatically. That's a federal thing. So the program director will know about those kind of things. So there's not a lot of red flags per se that come to the interview process that aren't more just, would you really want to come here? What is it about our program that makes you interested in our program? Work ethic, if there's been professionalism issues along the way, you have some issues in family practice, and okay, that's not surgery, but is that a trait that kind of carries through some of the other clerkships? If we see somebody that is, we actually have, in the old days, we would have everybody come in and actually meet with the residents and just have a dinner with the residents. And there's a lot of Q&A that happens at that point. And so the residents get a good feel for, the personal interaction with that individual. So some of those will also kind of play into, is there a red flag associated with that individual? So it's hard to say this is a red flag. It's more of, again, your application as a whole. And are there inconsistencies in that application that don't sound right? So you really, really want general surgery, but you've only done one rotation, which was your clerkship. And then all your sub-Is and everything else is in pediatrics and family medicine. And none of your research even remotely comes close to anything associated with surgery. You have had no surgical exposure in the form of SSO or anything like that, then, that kind of makes me wonder whether you really want to do surgery or not. So that's kind of more of the red flags that we look for.
If I have another couple of questions, if like along the residency lines, this might be far-reaching, but really common knowledge that lots of people have to apply to lots of places to be competitive in the process. Some specialties are doing tokens. A, have you heard about that? B, do you think that will become common practice to help, like as another layer with STEP being gone, of people saying, I really, really like these programs versus I'm just broadly applying everywhere because they statistically want to match?
Right. So FYI, okay, we've looked at the numbers. And there is no statistically significant difference in applying to 50 or 100 programs and the number of interviews you're going to get. I'm going to throw that out there right now. Okay. You all, and this M3 class that's starting to apply, an M4 class that is applying now, they've been all neurotic. I think each of them that I talked to personally has applied to at least 100 or 150 programs. And then all of a sudden they're very concerned because they've only had 4 or 5 interviews. That's kind of been the nature of it this year, just because of Zoom interviews and just the way COVID made us change our interview process. So the problem is I'm not going to be able to tell you right now what the status of the interviewing cycle is going to be when you guys are M4s and entering that. Okay. So that's a beast that you can't control. So the focus right now should be on what can you control. And that is making sure your application is the best it can be, making sure that your application is complete. Start thinking now about your letters of recommendation. Start thinking now about your personal statement. How are you going to kind of plan that? How are you going to progress that? Because at the end of the day, I don't know what we're going to do 2 years from now. You know, we're still doing Zoom interviews. In fact, that we've got our last set of interviews this Saturday. Okay. 2 years from now, we may be back into doing, you know, personal interviews. So it's too much to try to say this is what's going to happen now. What can you control? You can control yourself and your, you know, what you present. And that's where the focus should be right now.
Fair enough. If anyone wants to jump in ahead of me, this question came up with a mentor recently. In the kind of like orthopedics Twitterverse and that space, there's lots of talk that no matter what, even if you want to go to your home program, you like have to do an away because people value this idea that somebody else somewhere else could like you. If someone really wanted to stay, for example, here at KU, do you think the away carries that level, or is the away truly only kind of like an audition for another school that you really want to go to? Like, what level of importance should those things have if you really wanted to stay at KU?
One, you have to know that the KU way is not the only way. Okay. Yeah, we're good here, but there's places that are good. There's places that are better. There's places that are worse. Okay. It comes back to having data points. Okay. You can't make an informed decision if you only have one point of reference. You have to be able to go out and say, damn, that program at KU, yeah, that's really good. You know, this is what I really have because I'm comparing it to X, Y, and Z. Okay. Or, hey, program X, man, there's some things here that are actually kind of cool that, you know, maybe I'll bring back to KU. Okay. So it's about broadening your data set. And
okay,
I have a problem with programs that are inbred.
Fair. So look at it as the opportunity to compare, regardless of where you think you want to go.
Yeah, I would definitely. I encourage everybody to go out and, you know, and we can get into a much further discussion as to how you pick your top 5 programs. But then it's really about going out there and figuring it out, because maybe it's you go away for your residency and then come back and bring that back to KU as faculty. Okay. So just because you don't do your residency here doesn't necessarily mean that you're never going to come back to KU. There's other factors as well. So, you know, you can't get so blindsided by this is the place I want to be and not look at any place else.
Fair. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, we are right up against time. Does anybody, any last minute, this is your moment. You got Dr. Burbell on the phone. Any last minute questions? If not,
I'm available. If you email, you're going to have to give me a couple of days. Because yeah, email boxes all of a sudden explode on a regular basis. So, but I'm always available. Feel free to reach out. It's not like my email is hard to figure out. So there's not a lot of Burbells in the directory. So definitely questions, we can set up time. I've done that with several of the M4s who were M3s who started with me with M2s. So this is definitely a process, and don't feel that you have to do it alone. Don't feel that there's not resources available to help you through it. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. On behalf of SSO, we appreciate you all. And Dr. Burbell, especially. Thank you so much for splitting time and just having a life and being a great surgeon.
Well, they snuck out. They're snuck in. They don't. You guys didn't even see them. I'm surprised. I figured they would photobomb at some point, but
They did really great. So good job to them too. All right, guys. Thank you so much. M1s, good luck on your test. M2s next week.
have a good day.
Cool. Thanks. Bye-bye.